made $14 from this? Wow!
This review has been made possible by Norbert thanks to his rockin' support on Ko-fi. If you want to be cool like him, please head over to my commission page to order your own choice for an animated TV, movie, or special for me to review. Alright, I hit the jackpot with this choice from Norbert. I'm finally talking about Fern. This is a childhood staple that remains one of my all-time favorite animated series, and I estimate with confidence that this is the cartoon I watched as a kid the most, just as much as Looney Tunes, SpongeBob, or the Very Odd Parents. And with the recent troubles PBS Kids has been facing, the timing to review something out of such a definitive program from the block couldn't be better. But this isn't a regular episode of Fern I'm talking about today. This is one of the series' hour-long TV specials. It's only rock and roll. In contrast to the previous one, Fern's Perfect Christmas, which was a more timeless ensemble holiday story, this is a fairly obvious early 2000s time capsule made to capitalize on the popularity of its special guest stars, the Backstreet Boys. Of course, Fern is no stranger for having some extremely notable celebrities find their way over to Elwood City, whether it's Mr. Rogers, Art Garfunkel, Adele Dazeem, Lance Armstrong, actually no, forget about that one. And of course, how could we forget Shea Frolis' favorite Arthur character, Matt Damon?
Tell Arthur Reed that he'll never eat lunch in this town again.
But the fact that this is an hour-long special with the Backstreet Boys as a selling point just emphasizes the power of this early aughts boy band craze, which as a 2000s kid myself, I do remember witnessing. Like, I remember when NSYNC appeared on Sesame Street, and by extension, there's no way I could forget Chris Kirkpatrick as Chip Skylark on Very Odd Parents. But I was never obsessed with either of these bands per se. So with this Fern special, I have vague memories of catching it on TVO Kids back in the day, and clearer memories of revisiting it on YouTube in the years since. Either way, I know for a fact that I saw a super truncated version of this behind-the-scenes DVD featurette as an interstitial on PBS before the credits roll, way more often than the special itself. Reviewing its only rock and roll will simultaneously be easy and challenging for me. On one hand, it will be easy because I am a lifelong Fern fan with a sizable amount of knowledge on the show's lore, but such nerdiness is also what's gonna make it challenging to keep this review within my 15-minute time limit. Not to mention all the funny moments this show is known for pumping out, but I'm gonna keep my encyclopedic love for the show under control as I begin to channel my inner Matt Neff and Elwood City limits and examine if this Fern special is worthy of recommendation or not. Just a heads up before we get into the plot, as with many regular episodes of the series, Mr. Arthur Timothy Reed himself is merely a supporting character at best in this TV movie. Also, this publicity art is a lie. We don't actually see him meet the Backstreet Boys up close. On the bright side, the title of It's Only Rock and Roll is much less deceiving because it implies that this story could still function just fine without this specific band as special guests. Now, the real stars here are three of Arthur's friends, Francine, Muffy Crosswire, and Fern Walters, and I'll let you guess which of these three girls is the least obnoxious. And now, on to our story.
Yes, on to our story!
So, Francine has gone sick and tired of the hype surrounding the Backstreet Boys, who have a concert in Elwood City coming up. Meanwhile, Muffy is simping on them, particularly Nick Carter, as much as Mei Lee in Turning Red fawns over For Town. In one of many occasions in the series where her ego is inflated, Francine starts up her own band solely to prove to Muffy that musical groups should maintain integrity without selling out. At first, this band, soon given the name You Stink, only consisted of Francine as songwriter and drummer, Biggie on clarinet, Molly on guitar, and Mrs. McGrady on keyboard. But Francine seems to have forgotten what was established in the season 4 episode To Beat or Not to Beat. She sucks at singing and drumming at the same time. This is when Fern, the quiet poet of the cast, volunteers to become the lead singer, and it's her surprising talent that helped You Stink become Elwood City's equivalent to the Beatles. However, such popularity is what drives Francine to quit You Stink and accuse Fern of betraying her after the latter enabled the idea of expanding the band's recognition. With Franny out, a drum machine is in, plus Muffy's in as the manager, with hopes that this will be her key to getting up close and personal with Nick Carter. And It does happen later, but not exactly the way she expected. But what about the so-called aardvark this show is named after, who is voiced in this period of the show by King Russell himself, Mark Rendall? Like I said, Arthur himself doesn't contribute an awful lot to the plot. After he, Buster, and George were rejected by Francine during band auditions, the three boys decide to ride on the coattails of You Stink's success by forming a musical trio with the inspired name of We Stink. This is a small subplot mostly served as extra comedy relief, but We Stink dissolved as quickly as it started once Francine infects the trio with her negativity. But hey, at least we got one funny liner from George out of this breakup.
I don't mind staying. We could have a band with just tambourine and drums, right? Like Sonny and Cher.
Now, the message that it's only rock and roll is telling us is something that is best described through the lyrics of You Stink's only hit single, Nothing But the Music, which is a definite banger written by Sesame Street / Between the Lines songwriters Paul Jacobs and Sarah Durkee. No matter the form of entertainment you pursue, nothing is inherently wrong with gaining lots of fans for your passion and finding sustainability through it. But as cool as it may be to have all that fortune, attention, and fast food campaigns, it's important to maintain the good quality of your beloved gift, maintain some sense of humbleness in your public image, and don't get too carried away with the fame. Plus, there's a reminder of the importance of teamwork that applies to both of the main bands near the special's end. Those are great lessons for audiences to learn. However, no way was the execution depicted perfectly. For starters, we gotta talk about old Franny over here. She's up there with Muffy as my least favorite character in the main Arthur cast. Depending on the episode, each girl would take turns being worse than the other, and occasionally they're depicted on equal levels, like when they came off as huge hypocrites in the infamous episode where Arthur uncharacteristically bullies Llewellyn. But this is one of those occasions where the tomboyish twerp is more unlikable than the spoiled rich girl. Yes, I know DW is more widely hated in the fandom, but forget conformity. She's a highway entertainment smartass who, while deserving of criticism sometimes, sure, is a hilarious caricature of the annoying younger sibling. Even in this special, she's on par with Binky and Buster in the comic relief department. Not being super bratty, just innocuously helping to spread the word about You Stink with her crudely drawn, misspelled trading cards. Also, I love how DW's former favorite song, Crazy Bus, is mentioned as a thing of the past, considering her obsession with it during the earlier seasons. But going back to Francine, she acts like an obnoxious, naggy, self-righteous grouch, no different than the previous times where she comes off as more of a bully than the two official bullies that make up part of her band, both of whom went through tremendous character development during the show's run. Don't get me wrong, it was indeed a good thing that she reconciles with her friends and realizes the story's moral at the end, but still, remember, Francine didn't have the most positive intentions for starting this whole music group in the first place, since it was mainly part of a bet so Muffy could stop obsessing over these overly commercialized musicians. I remember a similar attitude being depicted in a season 10 episode, World Girls, where Francine belittles Muffy and Llewellyn for their dedications to the show's version of the American Girl doll franchise. In the case of running this You Stink band over here, sure, this experiment of hers does succeed for a bit, but it ends up backfiring for her because of the high demand for more and more out of the musical quintet. Also, the way Francine antagonizes Fern from the moment Mrs. McGrady suggested to give this quiet kid a chance to be the lead singer gives me flashbacks to Season 2's Draw, where she insults Fern by calling her a mouse, leaving Fern and the other kids at Lakewood Elementary to turn Miss Frensky into a prime target for gag cartoons. And just like in that episode, major kudos to Mrs. McGrady, the only adult member of You Stink, for being there as the show's mediator. In general, she's one of the show's more underrated characters. Don't forget, she successfully won a battle against cancer later on. So yeah, Mrs. McGrady is absolutely based. Okay, as for my other most hated character on the show, Mary Alice Crosswire over here, this is actually one of her more tolerable roles in the story, at least compared to the temperamental Francine. Obviously, this doesn't mean he's spared from criticism. The worst things he does during the night of the Backstreet Boys concert is basically bribe a roadie to trick Nick Carter into going in a separate elevator from the other members so that Muffy could sneak her way into the same one as him. In general, the way this 8-year-old girl is all thirsty for a man who's almost 3 times her age is simultaneously cute and creepy. I mean, nothing's wrong with precocious crushes like this one, so as long as they remain unrequited, but geez, bribery in the name of simping on a pop singer? This moment is the straw that breaks the camel's back, but at least Muffy sorta gets her karma by clumsily pushing a button that gets her and Nick stuck in the elevator. This prolonged stay in an elevator may not be as inventively humorous as one of my favorite Captain Flamingo gags, but it was funny to see Nick's claustrophobia kick in as Muffy tries to flex her junior manager muscles by offering him a deal he can't refuse. Stalker behavior aside, another notable moment that is totally in character for Muffy is her putting together a homemade music video based on nothing but the music. Although she is no Michael Patterson or Candace Reckinger when it comes to directing such a thing. Hell, even the more minimalist music video for Bob Wire's hit single generated more buzz. Muffy hopes that mailing this Muffy the Vampire Slayer tape will earn her a connection with the Backstreet Boys, but then her father, Ed Crosswire, basically tells her, "Tough luck, kid. As rich as we Crosswires are, we're small potatoes compared to the Backstreet Boys." Of course, this does nothing to make Muffy more humble, but hey, had YouTube been around in 2002, the so-called music video might have been a decent viral hit in the ranks of Numa Numa. Also, Muffy should be lucky to be one of the only 3rd graders in Elwood City who's allowed to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Meanwhile, Arthur is forbidden to watch James Hound until he's 5 years older. Using Buffy as a basis for a whole movie by Muffy would also show up in Season 11's The Making of Arthur, in which he directs Muffy the Umpire Slayer. And speaking of Matt Damon, how do the Backstreet Boys compare to the Titan AE star as far as real-life celebrities getting converted into the anthropomorphic world of Arthur are concerned? While they don't seem to have the same meme levels of infamy, the designs of the band and the series style are about on par with Matt Damon in terms of possessing that uncanny charm blending animal features with their real-life counterparts. In fact, one of the DVD featurettes for It's Only Rock and Roll has Arthur creator Mark Brown admit that it's challenging to turn a human celebrity into a humanoid animal creature who would fit right in with the mutant cast of Rock and Roll. Honestly, it was cathartic to hear that from Mark Brown, because as any longtime viewer of Arthur can observe, for every good design like Fred Rogers and Alex Trebek, there is an oddity like BJ Novak from the season 19 finale. Ugh. Uncanny designs aside, what the Backstreet Boys are shown to be best at in this special is, of course, their singing talent, whether it's their own hit single, I Want It That Way, or joining a fully reunited You Stink in a reprise of Nothing But the Music. Ultimately, however, the You Stink band wound up being extremely short-lived after one song in their discography, with the members being honest with each other and admit that this music business is cumbersome. It was probably for the best. Nevertheless, even though It's Only Rock and Roll didn't leave the biggest impact on the Arthur series after it premiered, it received a few callbacks in subsequent episodes. The most notable one that comes to my mind is the Season 9 episode Breezy Listening Blues. When the brain opens up suggestions for the right music to play in the background of his mom's ice cream shop, we don't just hear the return of Nothing But the Music, but even We Stink had a very brief comeback concert, and they sound as laughably pathetic as before. Considering that It's Only Rock and Roll has very rarely rebroadcast since its initial 2002 premiere, you would have to be a humongous Arthur geek to easily get those references. Or, you could have a copy of the DVD. Overall, while there may be several other music-themed stories in the series that I find more lovable than this, especially Arthur's Almost Live Not Real Music Festival, I don't care if half of it is a clip so, I still find It's Only Rock and Roll to be a fun special all of these years later, even if it is a Backstreet Boys publicity stunt that reeks of early 2000s flavoring. When you put aside the bitterness that's honestly typical of Francine Frensky, it is a generally entertaining musical, redeemed by a catchy song or two, several funny moments that I unfortunately can't list all of, and a moral on gaining popularity through your passions that may have been flawed in execution, but the essence of said moral is good enough for viewers both young and old to take to heart. Thank you so much, Norbert, for giving me the familiar territory of Arthur as my latest review request subject. To everyone else watching, do you remember this rock and roll special as well? Did you watch it during the popularity height of the Backstreet Boys? And do you side with Francine on the band being, quote, sellouts? Please leave your answers in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a microphone emoji in the comments to confirm that you watched this review until the very end. Thanks for watching and take care.